everybody. I'm Farah Ahmed. I'm here with Sue Howenstein, and we are doing candidate conversations with the Fort Bend Voters League and Fort Bend CAN, a true grassroots organization that cares about informing the voters about what's happening in their county and the elections that are coming up. And we are lucky to have a candidate conversation with Angie Hanan, who is serving on Fort Bend ISD right now. And is up for re-election. So Angie, welcome. These conversations are going to be about 30 minutes, and we hope that everyone will enjoy our candidate conversations, and I'll let Sue take it away.
Yeah, we'll start off with the light bulb, the easy questions. We want you to introduce yourself to the voters and tell them why you're running.
Okay. Thank you, Sue. Thank you, Farha, for having me. So I'm running again, and I'm running again for the same reasons I ran in 2020. So again, my name is Angie Hanan, and I've lived in this district for 29 years. And I've also been an educator for 29 years. And I really have a heart for this school district. And back in around 2015, people that actually work in the administration building, when I was doing some consulting, they asked me if I would consider running for the board. And at the time, it wasn't the right time. And my daughter was still in elementary school and in sixth grade. So anyway, the time was right in 2020. And so I ran because I really think that I have something to offer as an educator. And I really think that we need board members who are focused on trying to build up this district and not tear it down. That's really important to me. And while we're not getting everything right, we are getting a lot right. And my focus is really on student outcomes. And I think we have some work to do with program evaluation and taking a hard look at what we're doing and what we're doing well and what is not working, and reevaluate. There might be some things that we need to get rid of and redesign. And so program evaluation is very important to me, coupled with long-term thought through strategic planning. I think those are the key reasons that I'm running again.
And your experience will be very valuable. I think because we probably have a lot of people watching who have never been to a school board meeting. If you would just share what a school board member does. I mean, a lot of people think you do things that you don't do, you can't do by law. I mean, there's a lot of misinformation out on the streets. So if you could just kind of talk about the role of a board member.
That's true, Sue. A lot of people think we have some power that we don't have. So I think one thing I would really like people to know and understand is the only person that the school board is in charge of hiring is the superintendent, right? And we are unpaid elected volunteers. And so a lot of our policy gives the authority to the superintendent to get things done. And a lot of times, it's kind of a challenge because people get in the weeds and want to dictate things that should be delegated to our superintendent. And our true job, this is Angie Hanan's opinion, our true job, we have three things. We're in charge of governance. That's making sure that the policies that we have written that are being followed, and that procedures that align with those policies are, the boots on the ground, the rubber on the road, and they're actually happening. The next one is to build trust, which, I think being accessible to constituents is really important. And I know that's hard. I actually have not worked since I've been on the board, so I could give more time. And the third, governance and oversight go hand in hand, but to really provide that oversight, so building trust, governance. And the third one is tricky because we have a very new board, but it's to really build the vision, to set the vision. Part of that vision is we evaluate the superintendent and we set the goals that we expect, for her to reach. And that's a little bit of a challenge with the new board, understanding how to write those goals. And so that's kind of in a nutshell. So the only time we get to truly do work together is when there is a quorum, when we are all together. That would be, the majority of the board is sitting there. And so it's an unusual way to operate, because many of us are used to, hey, let's get this all done, and then we'll convene and hash things out. And we do have some committee work, but the real work is sitting on the dais.
Right. And I remember we used to say that we decide what direction we want the district to go, but the superintendent decides how to get there.
That's a great way to put that. So that's a very good way to put that idea of visioning coupled with the policy and the building trust. Yeah.
So Angie, you don't have anything to do with appraisals, because that's what we keep hearing about.
Oh, you know what? And Farha, thank you for asking that, because during the VATRE, one of the things, and I said it from the dais, I said, I need you to make it very easy for people to understand that the tax appraisal district is a separate entity from us. And you'll have to forgive me, my yard man is here, so if you can hear the lawnmower going. We have nothing to do with everyone's very shocking appraisals that they just got in the mail. And so to take that a little bit further, because mine went up substantially. I know a lot of people who did. But even when those appraisals go up, the district doesn't reap the benefits from that. We don't reap the benefits from that. The allotment that we get is the same from the state, and the amount that we can, that $1.13 per 100 of the tax that we pull off of our property tax, it's the same. And so it's not like the percentage increases. So that is very confusing. Public finance is very confusing.
Right. It's not directly benefiting the district itself from this windfall. I think that would upset people less if they saw the money coming back and reinvested in the district. But it goes to those education coffers and redistributed out. But I wanted to follow up on, I've got some really good questions in terms of, and there's a lot of interest in vouchers and the whole thing that's happening in the Texas legislature about awarding, $8,000 to each family. I'm assuming, just for homeowners, that they can take that money and go and pay tuition to a private school, parochial school, maybe even school. I have no idea how the doors open. Charter schools, which are public schools in a different way. What's your feeling on the vouchers, and what are some of the things or myths that people don't understand about the vouchers and how it will impact public education?
So Farhad, this morning, there's some bills going. It started at 8. It's probably finished now, but the Public Ed Committee was hearing a couple of them. One was one that Jatan had put forward. It's not the larger Senate bill, but there are other bills that have small pieces of voucher language in them. And so I actually got up this morning, sent my response so it could be documented on the record for the hearing this morning, that I oppose vouchers. And I think what people don't understand, so I'm going to give my personal example. So most of my career, I worked with at-risk learners. They were on free and reduced lunch. They were coming from homes, not all of them, but a large majority were either from homes in poverty or very working class families. And so most of those families, even if you gave them $8,000, they wouldn't have the means to make up the rest of the tuition that they would need. They wouldn't have the capability to drive the child and pick the child up from a private school. And on top of that, the private school doesn't have to take them. They're not like public school. So if you don't tick off all the boxes that a private school wants in a student, you're out of luck. So it's my opinion, and I 100 support anyone who wants to take their child to a private school, anyone who wants to homeschool their children. They have to make that decision. But I think money that is put in the coffers from taxpayers should go to fund traditional public education. And by that, I mean in Texas, our independent school districts. Because I truly think that is how in society we can work to level the playing field.
Yeah.
I just do. And I really, I'm very disappointed. And I'm very concerned with this 88th legislature and how many bills, not just the big voucher bill, but how many bills contain that language. So, you know what? I think, well, I think that people who are wanting to provide vouchers simply don't have the level of empathy that they need, and the level of understanding of what it means to work with every kid, no matter where they're coming from, no matter what their zip code is, no matter what their moms and dads do. And vouchers do not recognize that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, that was a little long, but
No, but what you're saying is
Yeah.
public education is the only institution that guarantees a quality education for each child, a fair education for each child, no matter what disabilities they come with. And then I guess you're going to have this unequal education track if
right.
you
And
start
it's not
funding
just
vouchers.
it's not just disabilities are hot. It really is the socioeconomic diversity. It could be the linguistic diversity. It could be the cultural diversity.
It's true.
We don't put a parameter on you. You all come. You're all invited to the table.
Yeah, you
right?
can't put a price on that intrinsic value of being with children from different
Right.
backgrounds, because
Right.
you know that's who you're going to be working with when your kids
Right.
get out into the working
Right.
world. They're going to work in a very diversified
Yeah.
community and world.
Especially.
So we're getting them ready early on to handle all those challenges of working. Diversity is a plus, and it also has its challenges too. So we want to make sure.
It does indeed.
Yeah.
And it's there's no way you can wrap the package to sell it to me, because it's detrimental to small rural school districts. It's detrimental to us as well. And the bottom line is not everybody is welcome at the table with a voucher.
That's a good way of putting it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I get all the softball questions for you. There's a lot of talk about the bond. Okay, that's going to be on the ballot too, along with all the candidates for school board. You know, the VATRA thing didn't do very well. Obviously, people like, look, we don't want to pay more in taxes. So if there's a way for us to avoid it, we want to avoid it. And that one failed. But for the bond, it seems like the funding looks very necessary for the school district. I don't know if we can kick the can down the road when some of these bond positions, I think they're broken up into different options. What's your understanding of the bond in terms of where people really need to pay attention to these different options and the need for it, and what happens if one or two options or this thing doesn't pass? What is the school board going to grapple with the next year?
Okay. Well, I'm going to start by saying I support the bond 100%, because we simply do not have the funding in our maintenance and operation budget to repair a large HVAC system if it fails. And we don't have the funds to make large plumbing repairs. Can our schools maybe go without restroom renovations? Maybe, but for people who haven't been in restrooms that need renovations, perhaps they should ask for a field trip at a nearby campus, because it matters. And I'll give the example in the 2018 bond, or it may have even been the 2014 bond there. And I'm going to name a school. Colony Bend is where my daughter was. And, some of the sinks didn't work as well as they should have. The restrooms needed renovations. They hadn't really been touched since the school was built. And, as a teacher and as a mom, that if kids don't want to go into a a bathroom if the stalls don't properly lock. And I know this is a very simplistic, one item from a bond, but many of these things are taking care of the fundamental basic needs of our kids: plumbing, heat and air, addressing bathroom issues, even where we can, kids aren't having to drink out of the water fountains where your mouth have to go down there, where you can put the bottle, in the time of, post pandemic. The bond takes care of so many maintenance issues in our buildings.
So it's all infrastructure then. None of the money
It's
will go to teacher's salary or.
Oh, it absolutely. We cannot pay teacher salary, but it goes to compute, new technology for our teachers, new technology for our students. Man, those computers they use them a lot, and the wear and tear on those, they need to be refurbished. So the deficiencies that we're covering in this bond, we're only covering about half of the deficiencies. It's about 600 million in deficiencies, and it's only half of the actual identified deficiencies. So that will have to be pushed to a future bond, and hopes this passes.
It's a $1 billion bond, I'm told.
It's
Everyone
1.26 billion.
but it's broken up into different parts. There's a lot of discussion of, okay, east side, west side, that happens with Fort Bend ISD, unfortunately. Is the money spread fairly and evenly to all the schools that are needed on geographically in Fort Bend ISD?
Well, Farha, I would say that I would encourage everybody to get on the Fort Bend ISD website and actually pull up their school, because it will show, it's not every single item that they're getting, but it shows how much is being spent in each building, and it's a considerable amount. And some of our newer schools, no, they're not getting the kind of funding that some of our older schools are getting. And so, would I have liked to have covered every deficiency? Yes, but calling a $2 billion bond is not feasible either. So I would say of all of those, even though I support them all, I would say, can we continue to function without a natatorium on the east side? We probably can, but does that perpetuate inequity in opportunity for our kids? It does. And so I really think that could we be addressing more issues with some of our older buildings? We could, but you have to prioritize. Just like with my house is 42 years old, and we've made priorities over the last 20 years of what we need. And so for about the past actually since I've been on the board, I've kind of neglected some things, right? And so we have some windows failing, we have some tile failing, and so if I let that get out of control, think about the pain of my pocketbook if I wait 5 years and don't do a little bit at a time so I can afford it. And I think that's what happens if we don't pass a bond. We are kicking the can down the road and sending our kids to schools with some deficiencies that are going to happen. And I don't want to see buildings that have trash cans collecting rainwater because we have a hole in the roof that can't be repaired. I fundamentally support this bond. It's a lot to look at and it's a lot to digest, but there is a lot of information on the website.
It's a lot of money. It's scary.
Yeah.
But
it is, but you know what? Our last bond was not $1 billion, but I think it was over 900 million. There's something about that $1 billion threshold that
it gets everyone's attention.
It's a lot. Lamar Consolidated, theirs in the fall was more than ours now. And so it's not unusual now. And we're the 6th largest school district in the state. And I think people need to really think about that. To make, think about how much it costs just to maintain a very small house, right? When you need a air condition, new HVAC unit in your home, to me, for me, that's a hefty price tag. But think about replacing it for a 5,000 square foot, building. Or anyway, it is a lot. It is a lot. And
Schools.
Farha, you're right. It's a big number.
It's a big
But
number.
we're a big school district.
We are. And there were bonds that were issued before. There's discussion that all the bonds were not issued, all the potential monies were not used. The phases of, I don't know, issuing bonds were not triggered. And so some of that is being rolled over into this. Do you have a little bit of insight into that? Like the 2018
We do have bond contingency funds that are remaining from 2014 and 2018. There aren't very many left from the 2018 bond, if that's what you're asking. And so when a district puts forward a bond package, right, they're doing, I do believe they're doing their level best. And I'm going to be honest with you. I asked this question. I said, are you building in contingency funds on purpose so that you have more money than you need? And the answer was no. I asked this question. I mean, I have it, we have a shared Q&A document. And so what happens is, some bids come under budget. Some priorities shift a little bit,
So
but
you don't need all the money. You don't need all the money at once or during that phase.
right. But they're not intentionally building in, all this extra money. So it's not like a rainy day bond contingency fund that they're building in there. I'm not sure if that's what you're asking, Farha.
No, I think you're right. And I think that people do understand about inflation, and the cost of building has gone up. And so they have to bake that into the numbers.
They do. And I think
unless inflation comes down and you get a windfall and you don't have to use the whole bond amount, that's fine.
Well, and I recently attended last month's Fort Bend Economic Development Council meeting, and they had a guest speaker, and he didn't talk about inflation going down in positive terms. So, I don't know that in the near future we're going to be there. And so unfortunately, when times weren't so lean, we continued to, in the district, low taxes were important to the school board members. But now that we're in a leaner time, right, and we still have one of the lowest tax rates on our property, that they're only a handful smaller than with less of a tax rate than we have. And so it's a quandary, because without that money, we have to have this money.
The tax rate or bond. Yeah.
Right. It's increased this one. So, that one was really intended for teachers, but we could surely also pay for, HVAC, plumbing, roofs. We could, computers, but this one, that's it. It's the capital projects.
Well, I think that was our last question. And you have a follow-up?
Okay, because I want to pivot while we still have you here. You mentioned it earlier, but I think most people are totally unaware, at least based on what I see in the questions on Facebook. Is there a plan, or do you have some ideas about how to address teacher salaries? Because you can't take that bond money and apply it to any staff salaries. So is there something you're thinking about? Is there a way that's going to be addressed?
For staff, to increase staff salaries. And so, Sue, I just have to be the bearer of bad news, because we're working at reducing the deficit that we have. And we're not the only school district that has incurred a deficit in recent years. But without the legislature helping us and infusing some money, and there are, I think it's House Bill 100 that also addresses pay increases. And don't quote me on that one, but there is some legislation that we're looking at increasing pay. It's also it's also a little bit, right? Not enough, like 2,000, which isn't.
And reimbursement for teachers that pay out of pocket for supplies and things like that. I think
right, just a little sprinkling here and there. But what we really need them to do, I'm not proud. We're ranked to like 47th in funding our public schools in the United States, right? And so until we recognize and value and elevate teaching, and that's just at that's at the national level, right? Because I predict in 10 years, if we continue on this slippery slope that we're on, we're going to be in a bind at finding people to educate our kids. So Farha, if we have status quo, I don't know how we will make that happen. But what we are doing, and I'm going to tell you, I support longevity pay. So that 20-year teacher, I think that the little tiny steps we give them is shameful. So I'm going to be working as hard as I can in my next term so that we can figure out how to recognize not only our teachers, but our staff.
But I think you made the right point. The point is, this is a legislative move.
It absolutely is. And even if we get enrollment based funding rather than average daily attendance, that is not going to help us. We're doing some interesting things. It's been my mantra since Dr. Whitbeck came, and I said, we've got to think about job shares and part-time teaching position, because a lot of people want to teach, but committing to full day, that's a lot of energy. So I got word from Dr. Whitbeck that they're going to start doing that again. And I really hope that we get some adjunct professors, some retired teachers, some people who would really want to come in and commit and devote time for a half day rather than a full day. Now that doesn't address address the pay, but it addresses that intrinsic desire to teach, but I don't want to commit 50, 60 hours a week.
Right. I mean, I went to a public school and I had a PhD teach me the class that he had the PhD for, was Texas history in 7th grade. And I just think that the quality of people that we can attract with maybe this part-time teaching might be really, really amazing.
I hope so. I hope so.
A teacher that I will remember always, right? And impacted my life in those middle school years, being a child of public education. I value that we value those teachers. But I wanted to give you a chance to kind of wrap up our conversation and give you a chance to kind of close up. Any closing statement that you'd like to say?
Sure.
Who's going to be listening?
Sure. So thanks again, Sue and Farha, for having me. And I think I want to just underscore that my mom and dad, they went to public school. And actually my mom's parents didn't graduate. My Papa Scroggins had a 3rd grade education and my Granny Scroggins had an 8th grade education. But nevertheless, my husband and I have we went to public schools, and my daughter is a junior at Dulles. And I want everyone to know that my 9 years as an employee in this district, my years of being a mom of a kid who's gone K-11 so far, we got one more year, and my volunteerism in this district, I have a unique perspective of the good things and the things that maybe we need to improve. And I really, really love this community. And I haven't loved everything that my daughter has experienced or that I see other kids experience, but I do think that we have a lot going right. And so I would just really, ask voters to think about the candidates and think about who is in it to build this district up, versus wanting to come in and tear it down because they have some agenda. And my agenda is about the kids in this district, about the people who work in this district, and about the people who live in this district. Because I live in Sugar Land, and I think we have a unique little enclave here in the state of Texas. And I think that we're very lucky where we live. So that's just what I would say. So, remember Angie Hanan, longtime educator, mom of a child, longtime volunteer, and I care about your kids, and I'm here because that's our business.
Thank you. Thank you, Angie, for spending your time with us.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Have a wonderful day, ladies.
Sue has some closing remarks.
Okay.
We really appreciate your time, and we hope that the viewers enjoyed getting to know you a little bit better. There are questions that we couldn't get to because we're trying to be respectful of everyone's time. But just a reminder, the election is on a Saturday. It's Saturday, May the 6th. You can vote from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. We live in Fort Bend County, where you can vote at any Fort Bend polling location. Although I will warn you that the numbers are down because there are not as many elections going on. I mean, we have no city elections basically in Fort Bend ISD, except for some of the smaller entities. You have the bond, that's a biggie. We hope you'll go out and speak up. For or against, that's fine, but keep in mind what's really happening with that money. Early voting takes place April 24th, which is a Monday, through Tuesday, May the 2nd. The hours will vary depending on the location. So we hope that you'll make a point, put it on your calendar and go out and vote. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you again.
We got early voting. You get the early voting days? All right. Thank you all. Thank you, Angie, for spending time with us, and we'll see you soon. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.